fact that we have to deal with an issue, whether it be racial bias or religious bias or ethnic bias at any level or whatever, the race, creed, national origin, whatever. That's a problem in and of itself, but I'm going to again come back to reality, and the issue then becomes, with the statistics, for example, and I'm going to use your issue there of the statistics. The statistics may drive this, but when you look at the statistics, and not trying to skew the data by any sense, when we look at the data and we say, the data that we have indicates that the larger percentage of capital cases involve African American males, I think is what most of the testimony has been today, and I might be being very general in how I present it. But the second piece of that is statistically, when we look at the imprisoned population, I believe that there's a significant percentage of the imprisoned population of African American males. So when you're looking at the beginning part is the class. When we look at the class of capital cases, for example, we already know that number is a defined number. We know that a significant percentage of that class of criminal, if you want to call it, or alleged criminals, are African American males. Then naturally the statistics would show that a larger percentage of those who are convicted in capital cases would be African American males,
right?
Because they're the largest group of that class. And that's kind of where I'm confused by the statistics. And then how do I come back home and I have the political fortitude to do what's right for the citizens in Pennsylvania?
Right.
How do I have the come back home and say that to my citizenry that we're going to treat one class of alleged criminals differently than all of the rest of the criminals in the system? And I think the practical application creates a little bit of a problem in terms of implementation. And then I come back to my original question, is the cost. What do we do in the suburban and particularly the more rural counties where we can't perhaps avoid the appearance, if nonetheless, the appearance of a bias, if you want to call it that, because we don't have the population numbers to be able to put any kind of a balance in place. You use the example of a county that might have one African American, and that person peremptorily always gets discharged from the jury. Well, that's unfortunate that there's only one African American in that county. So what are we going to do? We're going to bus in additional jurors and as an expense to the judicial system so that we could have 50 to review and then only discharge one or two of them? Or I don't understand. How does it practically work?
Well,
and cost effectively?
Okay. Again, the issue is not how many people you have on a capital jury, how many blacks that are on the capital jury. The issue is how they were withheld from a capital jury. So you don't have to bust anybody in. The thing that you're defending is not how many blacks were on the jury, it's whether or not blacks were barred from being on the jury. You mentioned another issue.
So then in a small county like Westmoreland or Armstrong, the prosecutor would be nearly precluded from ever discharging a African American from the jury.
Well, no, not at all. They would just need to be able to defend why they did it. Clearly not with some of the evidence that was shown here. Waiting outside, striking a person simply because they're African American or because, for whatever reason, for whatever discriminatory fashion was used to strike the person from the jury. Again, African Americans can be struck just like any other person from a jury, but if it's done in a discriminatory fashion, that changes.
The whole process of jury voir dire is discriminatory in nature. I understand that.
I understand that.
So when I'm voir diring the jury, potential jurors, I'm looking for a reason to either put them on the jury or take them off the jury.
Right.
And it's discriminatory by definition.
Right.
So I'm not following your presentation that we can't discriminate when we're selecting jurors, because if I'm defense counsel, I want a certain profile on the jury. If I'm the prosecutor, I want a different profile on the jury. And that's, by definition, profiling is discriminatory.
Right.
So you're gonna take away that discretion on both defense counsel and prosecutorial counsel.
Right. The question though is, do you have eligible, qualified minority jurors available for a jury pool that is supposed to, as the representative stated earlier, be a part of a jury of peers? And if you can, and if a prosecutor cannot show cause as to why they struck a person only but for the fact that their skin color was African American, that is a problem, even in the voir dire jury selection process.
Thank you.
But you raised another point that I think was possibly even more important, but it escapes me, and I think it had to do with, you spoke about going back to your district, and do you remember what your point was prior to that? Because I had an answer for it, but I got caught up in the jury. You raised I can't.
You talked about why it
Oh.
would not be working for everybody.
I know, so here's your point was, how do I go back to my district and explain to them that we're about to treat a class of defendants differently from everyone else? The evidence shows that you've already been treating classes of defendants different from everyone else. This is a remedy to the fact that certain classes have been treated a certain way. It is. This is an act that levels the playing field. So that argument would suggest that everything has been fair up until this point, but now we're going to create this mechanism that will, give African American or minority defendants, a hand up or a leg up in the criminal justice system. When in fact, the evidence shows that class of defendants has been getting a raw deal in the criminal justice system, and this is, as my testimony was, this was an opportunity. This is the legislature's opportunity and mechanism to not only address the issue, but police ourselves in writing something that has been a clear wrong for some time now. Not just in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina, in Texas, all across the country. And I agree with you. It's broader than just the death penalty system, which I believe was your first point. You talked about a certain class of criminals.
Right.
I believe that speaks to it is not accurate that many of our Department of Corrections population is 60 to 70% African American. Right?
I didn't use any numbers.
Just from the crime statistics.
Okay.
We know from the statistics that those are disproportionate numbers as far as who commits crimes to who finds themselves in prison, right? But acts like this one attempt to address that, at least at the sentencing phase. Right? We can't get to the first line of discretion where, who gets arrested, who gets let go, or who in a criminal proceeding might get probation as opposed to active time. This bill doesn't address stuff like that. But what it does say is, in a criminal justice proceeding where the decision of who lives and who dies is at stake, race will not be a factor in that decision.